Hey guys, how's it going? Tom Morcus here, and today we're going to talk about fanaticism, and specifically 7 marketing lessons that I gleaned from the book The True Believer, which is a book about mass movements, and how we can apply that to our own marketing efforts to increase sales and drive growth. You ready? Let's get to it. So The True Believer is a book about mass movements. It's a social psychology book written by Eric Hoffer and published in 1951. And it's one of those books that's been shared quite a bit in the political sphere. And it's been referenced by many presidents, from Eisenhower, who recommended it as one of his top books to read, to Johnson, to President Reagan even gave Eric Hoffer an award for his work in this space. And it was recently, most notably, referenced by Hillary Clinton in one of her reasons for why she lost the presidential bid to Donald Trump. I guess referring to the fact that Donald Trump somehow was able to kind of master this art of fanaticism and create fanatics out of his followers. So whether that's here or there is not the point. Whether there's a veracity or validity to those statements and claims, that's not the point either. But I think what is important here is just that the book has had quite a shelf life, and it's something that seems to kind of ebb and flow. And right now I'm starting to see it pop up more and more. So I think now is a great time to kind of break down the book from the perspective of marketing. How can you apply these insights of fanaticism into your own marketing to increase growth, sales, revenue, and profit? So let's start with lesson number 1. This is marketing lesson number 1 gleaned from The True Believer. And lesson number 1 is market to the frustrated. So here's a quote from The True Believer. There is in us a tendency to locate the shaping force of our existence outside ourselves. Success and failure are unavoidably related in our minds with the state of things around us. Hence it is that people with a sense of fulfillment think it is a good world and would like to conserve it as is, while the frustrated favor radical change. You know, the takeaway from this is pretty simple. It's that if you're marketing people who are content, there's no real desire for change. But when people are frustrated, they already know something's wrong, and they're probably already seeking a solution, or at least subconsciously maybe, because they're frustrated. That's the nature of being frustrated. And so as a marketer or somebody trying to generate sales and profit for your business, you have to think about, who are you targeting? If you're trying to convince somebody who's content that they need to change, that's an uphill battle. Conversely, if you're targeting people who are frustrated, who are struggling to get by, who are trying to make a change, who want change, that's a much easier group of people to sell to. And I bring up Proactive because Proactive is a great example of a company that markets to the frustrated and always has. And one of the reasons they're a $1 billion per year revenue company right now. They were started in the 1990s. And you may have seen one of their infomercials, or hundreds of them, because they're like on nonstop. But bottom line is, Proactive is a skincare company, and they're trying to help people who have bad skin get clear skin. And every single one of their infomercials is basically just before and after, and testimonials, and then they add in social proof through celebrity endorsements. And they didn't start that way. And that's why I wanted to bring up this original infomercial by Proactive, and we're going to watch a little bit of it here in just a second. But you don't have to have the celebrity endorsement. They just ramped it up with celebrity endorsements to really scale and grow. But when they originally started, I think they did have some sort of celebrity endorsement in the early ones for sure, but the names have gotten bigger since. But the reality here is that what they've done is they just targeted people who are frustrated with their skin, and you can see that in every single infomercial that they run. So let's watch a little bit of this just to understand a little bit of the language they're using, so we can better think about how we can apply it to our own marketing.
In the last few years, hundreds of thousands of men and women have discovered Proactive Solution, and they've done it right here from an infomercial. Hundreds of thousands. So I decided to go out and talk to some about their experience. Listen, tell me how you found out about Proactive.
My grandma called me, and she was watching an infomercial, and she said, I have to get this stuff for you. If I order it for you, will you try it? In about 3 weeks, I started noticing the difference. The red splotches were going away, and it really was starting to work.
It has made such a difference in my skin, and there's nothing better than having your coworkers, your friends, your wife, my kids. Daddy, your face looks so clear.
People look at me, I tell them about this all the time, and they say, you don't have bad skin. No, not anymore.
Diane P. Fleming.
So there you go. You can see where that could go. You can watch the whole infomercial. I'm not gonna do that right now and bore you with that. But you get the idea. It's like every single one of those was just case study, case study, case study, and each one was talking about how frustrated they were with their skin. I want clear skin, or I have bad skin, and so everything's about how bad their skin was in some way, shape, or form. Different ways of describing that same pain or agitation. and then the desire that they wanted, which is the clear skin, and what Proactive has given them. So that's lesson number 1, market to the frustrated. Lesson number 2 is simple. It's aggravate one pain and one pain only versus many pains. And here's the quote from the True Believer. Our frustration is greater when we have much and want more than when we have nothing and want some. We are less dissatisfied when we lack many things than when we seem to lack but one thing. All right. This one is pretty straightforward, but I'm going to share with you why I think it's actually deeper than what you might even imagine. So there's an experiment that you may have heard of, which is called the gorilla, the invisible gorilla. And it's a visual perception experiment. And I think it was done in the 90s, it was done in the late 90s. Yeah, there it is, 1999 in the video. And what it was an experiment that was run where the experimenters had a number of people pass a ball around to each other in white shirts and black shirts. And then the person who was coming in for the experiment, the person that they were running this experiment on, was to be able to count the number of times the ball was passed to the players in white, right? Count the number of times the ball was passed to players in white. So that's the setup, right? You guys may have seen this, but I'm going to play a little bit of it for you just as a quick refresher so you can see what it's like and what the experiment was, and then what the big takeaway is from this lesson.
This is a test of selective attention. Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball.
Okay, so you guys get the idea, right? It's a bunch of people running around like this, throwing balls to each other, and if you're counting the people in white, then you're going to ignore the people in black, right? Typically speaking. Well, one of the other things you might notice right now is that something is walking through the screen. So what's so interesting about this is that the majority of people obviously counted the number of passes right, but about half of the people going through the experiment completely missed the gorilla that walked through the screen. I don't know if you caught it while I was talking, but you probably did because we're not running this as an experiment. And maybe you've already heard of it. And what's so interesting about this, okay, so obviously, visual perception, what they're saying is that, when you focus on a thing, you tend to ignore things on the periphery, right? You don't notice them as readily. And hence that's what the experiment was basically proving. About half of people just missed the gorilla entirely because that's not what their aim was. They weren't focused on that. They were focused on the ball. But I think this goes one step further, and this is a book that maybe I'll do a breakdown on in the future. It's called The Ecological Approach to Visual Perception. And it's basically how we act in the world. And one of the main precepts of it is that we are in an environment that has affordances and things that we can use to kind of further our mission and goals and move where we want to move. So we're locomotive beings in a world that has objects, things that object to us as we move through it. Well, what this book basically is stating from a more academic standpoint than obviously Eric Hoffer's is that, listen, if you are not aimed at something, then you might actually not see it at all, and therefore it doesn't exist. And so the ecological approach to visual perception kind of has shed new light on this for me to better understand from a sales perspective, when a customer goes to make a purchase, what are they seeing? Or from the lead generation standpoint, what will somebody see and what will they not? The big thing here is if they're not already looking for it, they won't see it. And I don't know if you guys remember the scene from Vanilla Sky, great movie, but there's a part in it where he starts yelling. He's like, "There is no murder." He gets set up for a murder. It's a whole thing. It's a pretty cool movie. But the point is, I want you to say it with me. There is no gorilla. There is no gorilla. There's no gorilla. And think about that in your marketing. There is no gorilla. Think about that in the context of your potential customers, your leads, and the people who end up buying from you. They're not going to see the gorilla unless you tell them to look at the gorilla, right? And so they're already probably looking at things, but if you can get their attention, you can have them look at the thing you want them to look at, then you can guide them in the direction that you want them to go. You can guide them to take that action. But if they're not even searching for the gorilla or whatever that is, so maybe that's your pain, your problem, your struggle, right? They don't know that exists, they're not seeing it, then they're not going to pay attention to you if that's what you're talking about. So the critical thing here, I think, is to zoom in on one pain, not many, because one pain, the most critical, jarring, emotional, distracting, painful pain or problem is the only thing that your customers will be thinking about. And so there might be 100 problems that you can address with your solution. There might be 100 pains that you can help solve. But you need to figure out as a marketer, what is that number one pain that your customers have? And then how can you aggravate that the most? Because that's the thing they're looking at. They're looking at that ball being passed between the players in white and the shirts in white. They're not looking for the gorilla. So that one pain, if you can focus that in on the ball, then that's what they will see. And if you try to lay or overlay multiple pains and problems that you're trying to solve, there's this it's the nature of what you're focusing on and what you're aiming at. People don't have the capacity to see everything on the periphery. So your customers might not even experience it or understand those pains. So if you're trying to hit like 10, 20, 30, 50 pains in your sales pages and your marketing, stop it. Focus on one. Focus on one, aggravate that one pain, because that's the only one that your customers will see. They actually won't even see anything else. And so hence the gorilla does not exist. Okay, so that's lesson 2, aggravate one pain and one pain only. Marketing lesson number 3 from the True Believer is cultivate extravagant hope. Here's the quote. Where power is not joined with faith in the future, it is used mainly to ward off the new and preserve the status quo. On the other hand, extravagant hope, even when not backed by actual power, is likely to generate a most reckless daring. Those who would transform a nation or the world cannot do so by breeding and captaining discontent or by demonstrating the reasonableness and desirability of the intended changes, or by coercing people into a new way of life. They must know how to kindle and fan an extravagant hope. All right. So it's not good enough to just aggravate that one pain. It's not good enough to just focus on the frustrated. You also have to be able to bring them to that place that they want to be, that end state. And you have to be able to cultivate that extravagant hope. That hope, and what is hope? Hope is the positive expectation of the future, that the good things will happen. You can't just agitate the frustration, target the frustrated, agitate one pain, talk about all the terrible stuff. You have to also present the path forward, that painless path forward, and how they can reach it through your solution. But you also have to imbue in your marketing, in your messaging, that you hold the keys to that you have the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, that you have that secret sauce, that special thing that's going to get people there. We're going to talk about that a little bit more deeper in the next lesson. But also that everything you should do in your marketing should be hopeful. There should be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If somebody buys from you, you're going to help them achieve their goals. That's extravagant hope. And you have to believe that deep down in your core for that to be effective. You can't just make half-hearted comments. You have to truly believe it. And then that belief, if you truly believe it, that should spread into and fill in it basically should become apparent in your messaging, in your marketing, in your emails, in your images, in your copy. It should just kind of pour through it, that optimistic, hopeful expectation of what is to come. And you want to be able to kind of share that with your potential future customers. Not just aggravating their pain, not just focusing on the frustrated, but cultivating extreme hope in them that things can get better. And a great example of this is a political one, but honestly, President Obama crushed it with the marketing. Everybody can agree on that on either side of the aisle. Like his marketing was spot on. And you could of course argue that like the competitor's marketing was not even anywhere close to it, and all these other things. But I'm not getting into the political debate here. Just the fact that the marketing was on point, just like Donald Trump's marketing was on point in terms of "Make America Great Again." That's cultivating extravagant hope. And for Obama, it was just hope on that image. And again, there's a lot of other things that went into his campaign, but this is just proof that you don't even have to be clever with your marketing. It's like there is hope. There is hope if you go with me, if you follow me. And so maybe it's as simple as just putting the word hope in an image of yourself on your page. Maybe it's a little bit more than that. You probably do have to articulate the value in it, but you don't have to be clever about it. That's what's kind of cool. It's like people have a natural inclination to want to have hope. Like we all want to have hope. We just, in a world that's so noisy and chaotic and filled with terrible media that's consuming your minds, we lose hope a lot, right? So if you can just express that hope and help people understand that there is hope, that they might be struggling, they might be frustrated, they might have this one great pain, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can be something better. There is hope. That's what you want to do. Focus on how you can also cultivate that extravagant hope and don't try to be clever with it. So marketing lesson number 4 gleaned from the True Believer is demonstrate irresistible powers. This ties into number 3, which is cultivating that extravagant hope. And this is, I mentioned this in terms of the keys to the kingdom in the last one, and this is actually where I wanted to zoom in on that. And so here's the quote. For men to plunge headlong into an undertaking of vast change, they must be intensely discontented, yet not destitute. And they must have the feeling that by the possession of some potent doctrine, infallible leader, or some new technique, they have access to a source of irresistible power. So part of creating and cultivating that extravagant hope is the means of achieving that end state, right? And that's your solution. And that's where demonstrating irresistible power comes in, and demonstrating with your solution that you have the keys to the kingdom, that you have the secret sauce that is special that nobody else has. And it's the only way to go from frustrated to content, happy, to make that transition, to be at that final point, be at that end state that your customer wants to get to. So when you think about this, think about what's your secret sauce. What is unique about you or your solution in a way that is remarkable to your customer? Unique about you or your solution in a way that is remarkable to your customer. And let's focus on the solution, not about you. But what's remarkable about your solution in a way, or what's unique about your solution in a way that's remarkable to the customer? And I put remarkable there. That's an important word I used because it should be something that's unique in a way that matters to the customer, and then is something that they would remark upon or they would remark on, right? That makes it unique in a way that matters. So it's not just, oh, well, we have the fastest computer, or we're the, and it maybe your edge is speed. That's fine. But you have to make sure that it's not just something generic or that anybody else really has. You need to think about how you can position it so that it's like you are the only one that can do this way. And sometimes that's tying in some of your past, some of your background, maybe some of your pedigree, social proof, things like that. But ultimately, just getting really clear and concise in how you present your solution, and then articulating why your solution is the best and why you are the only one that has it. That you're the only creator of the solution that really matters to your customer. Because everything else out there is second fiddle. It's not going to be as effective, but yours is. And it could be because of those other reasons that I mentioned: pedigree, background, experience. It could also be because of a unique solution. But you can't just rest on the fact that it's like, oh, this is a proprietary technique is what I'm getting at. It has to, again, permeate everything you do. And this is actually something that a lot of people struggle with in marketing, but you probably need to be very self-promotional. And you need to really promote the heck out of your products and services and just talk about how great these solutions are and how magnificent they can be for people, and why your proprietary process, your solution is unique in a way that matters, in a way that people would actually remark upon. So if your customers are remarking upon your solution, then you're doing something right. And if people aren't really talking about it, then you need to go back to the drawing board. What can you do? How can you reposition what you're doing so that there's a secret sauce there? And I put in an image, a meme of Chuck Norris, just because, just as an example of really demonstrating irresistible power. Think about Chuck Norris. So what's your Chuck Norris meme for your solution? And this one was: when Chuck Norris was born, he drove his mom home from the hospital. That is some irresistible power. And so in your case, in your marketing, your solution, what is that almost meme-worthy irresistible power that you can demonstrate? That's another way to think about it. Marketing lesson number 5 from the True Believer is very simple. And you may have already heard of something like this or already be doing it, but it's define a common enemy. And so here's the quote: hatred is the most accessible and comprehensive of all unifying agents. It pulls and whirls the individual away from his own self, making him obvious of his will and future, frees him of jealousies and self-seeking. He becomes an anonymous particle quivering with a craving to fuse and coalesce with his like into one flaming mass. Okay, so listen, the author is obviously very pessimistic about mass movements, fanaticism, all that stuff. And so, it comes, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, hatred's a strong unifying agent. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the most successful and comprehensive of all unifying agents. I don't actually believe that. But there's something to be said that having something that you can point at and say, that's the bad guy, that's the enemy, is actually helpful from a unifying standpoint of your base. So that could be your customers, your readers, your subscribers, your clients, people who follow you. By having somebody else you can point to and say, we're not them, that's our enemy, or those are the bad guys, we're not that. It doesn't have to be a person either. It could be a thing, it could be an idea. I'll show you an example in just a second. That helps to kind of create a dividing line, and that helps to rally the base. A classic example of this is the Apple versus PC ads from, I think, the 2000s, early 2000s. And it's okay to hate both of these guys, and both of these companies. But the point I was trying to make here was, if you want to watch this one, just go ahead and search it. I'm not going to play through it. You guys have probably already seen the Apple versus Mac ads. And the premise of it was Apple was trying to show how cool and hip they were and how slow and boring and broken Windows was. And again, it's just an idea of creating a dividing line and saying, we're not them. So Apple has done that remarkably well over the last couple decades, saying we're not them. That's kind of been their shtick the whole time. And maybe you can glean and learn a lesson from really successful companies like Apple in that regard too, because they're not the other guys. They're not Microsoft. They're special boys. And so again, for you, who could be your common enemy? Again, I would play this video, but they're not very entertaining or that great, but good for reference. So you can check them out on your own. Well, the big thing to take away from this is that you'll notice that Apple's defining a common enemy here, but it's not aggressive or angry or hostile. It's actually super friendly. So you can define a common enemy in your marketing that can still be friendly and lighthearted and fun, but still be a unifying center for your people. So that's how I would recommend you implement this marketing strategy. Don't do it with vitriol or actual hatred, but do define a common enemy and do say, yeah, we're not this. We're not these guys. This is not us. What we do is this. We're not them. I think that is something that's really powerful. Any brand or business can get behind and do it in a fun or lighthearted way that doesn't have to be filled with hatred or vitriol or anything like that. I don't think that's the way to go with this, although certainly some brands and companies can get away with something like that. But that's definitely on the extreme end. Just understand that you can create and define a common enemy in a lighthearted and fun way, and you really should do something like that, whether it's a person, whether it's a brand, a company, or an idea even. These are all things that you can leverage to unify your base. Lesson number 6 from the True Believer is to keep them active. So this one's kind of an interesting one. I'm going to read the quote here and then I'll break it down for you. So imitation is often a shortcut to a solution. We copy when we lack the inclination, the ability, or the time to work out an independent solution. People in a hurry will imitate more readily than people at leisure. Hustling thus tends to produce uniformity. And in the deliberate fusing of individuals into a compact group, incessant action will play a considerable role. So 2 things about this quote real quick. Again, the author seems like he has a chip on his shoulder about the idea of like people trying to imitate others. But in reality, that's how humans learn. We learn through imitation. It's one of the most effective ways to learn is by modeling. Bottom line, like any practitioner of NLP or any coach or anybody doing any kind of sport can attest to that. Any physical competitions, like you have to be able to model. You have to model others. But the same goes in academic professions too, to model the behaviors and actions of those who are doing it right? That's really important. So I wanted to point that out because he's super critical about the imitation point. And I just want to say like that, like disregard that. I think it's actually a good thing. But the extraction point here is that you should maybe encourage imitation and you should encourage engagement and activity. Okay. So I'll share why in just a second. The reason you should get people engaged and active and busy, one of the primary reasons for this, there's 2 I'm going to point out. But the primary reason is something called the mere exposure effect. And it's that the more times your face or your brand or your name is put in front of someone, the more they will grow in preference to you. Their preference for you will increase over time. So it's repetition builds preference. Repetition builds preference. It's the mere exposure effect. So by constantly engaging with your customers, your clients, your readers, your subscribers, you're increasing their preference for you. So you want to keep things consistent. But then the second piece of that is activity. So keeping people engaged and active. And that also, kind of is a unifying element here. The way to do that, I think in a way that's actually useful, is not just to keep somebody busy for no reason, but to think about your customers, the goals they want to achieve. How can you keep them actively engaged in taking the steps to achieve that goal? Can you do daily steps or weekly steps? Can you get them submitting their homework? Can you get them updating you on their progress? Can you have them post before and after pictures? Can you have them, share a testimonial? Can you have them share the product or service with somebody else? Can you get them involved in a new campaign or event that you're running? Keep them engaged and active because that will unify the base. And then again, that other secondary effect that I think is actually the most powerful, most useful reason for it is mere exposure. So by keeping them engaged with you directly, with your company, with your brand, they keep seeing your face, your name, they're going to grow in preference to you. So consistency is actually kind of key in this. Consistency and keeping your customers, your clients, your readers, your subscribers actively engaged. Keep them busy, but busy in a meaningful way. Like I think you could take this the wrong way and just like keep them busy, and that's what Eric Hoffer's getting at in the book. Just keep them busy. But I'm suggesting that from a business standpoint, you keep them busy on fruitful, meaningful endeavors, helping them achieve their goals. That's the best way to do it. And then that builds preference for you, creates brand loyalty, and creates kind of a unifying camaraderie amongst your customers, clients, readers, and subscribers. And marketing lesson number 7 from the True Believer is sell what they believe. And this is a really good one, guys. And here's the quote. The truth seems to be that propaganda on its own cannot force its way into unwilling minds. Neither can it inculcate something wholly new, nor can it keep people persuaded once they've ceased to believe. It penetrates only into minds already open, and rather than instill opinion, it articulates and justifies opinions already present in the minds of its recipients. The gifted propagandist brings to a boil ideas and passions already simmering in the minds of his hearers. He echoes their innermost feelings. Where opinion is not coerced, people can be made to believe only what they already know. So you're not making people believe something, is the idea here. That's the end quote, by the way. So you cannot make people believe something. That's a loser's game. Stop trying to do that. If you're trying to do that in your marketing, you got to stop. You got to focus on the person who's frustrated already, and you need to kind of reinforce and validate their beliefs and fears and insecurities, using their own words and their own ideas back to them, so that kind of continues to reinforce their existing beliefs, because that is a way easier, more effective way to do this than to try to tear somebody's belief system down from scratch and then impose a new belief system, a new belief structure. That's such a loser's game. Like, maybe on the most extreme fringe it can work, but the percentages just won't play themselves out well for you if you're trying to do that. Instead, you should echo the innermost feelings of your customer. When we're talking about the frustrated, we're talking about agitating that one pain. When we're trying to then cultivate that extravagant hope, when we're showcasing that keys to the kingdom, that secret sauce that you have, that power that you're going to be able to diffuse and give to your customers. What does your customer's innermost feelings? What are your customer's innermost feelings about those topics, about the frustration, about the pain that they have? What are their innermost feelings? With proactive, it's like, why do you hate having bad skin? Why do you want clear skin so bad? And then they take that and they carve that up into 100 different case studies and then just rotate through, before and after. And they're just articulating the same pain in different modes and beings and means, so that the customer, because there's going to be a wide range of customers, they might all be frustrated with their skin, but they're going to be frustrated for different reasons. And maybe they want a better skin, and maybe they think about what they want in different capacities. Maybe somebody wants clear skin. Maybe somebody wants just better skin. Maybe somebody wants just not as much acne, or just wants to feel better about themselves, or all these different things, right? But you want to be able to zoom in on their innermost feelings and just support and reinforce what they already believe. Don't try to change minds. Just reinforce what they already believe, because you cannot force a belief. You cannot create a belief in someone, again, except through maybe extreme 1984 style practices, okay? Another important point to this, when it comes to selling what people believe, is you need to think about this idea of pacing and leading. So this is a concept that I learned from an NLP book called Frogs and a Princess by Richard Bandler. And NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. The idea is, how do you influence behaviors by actions and frames of reference, having people do certain things in a certain way, a certain order of sequences, or a certain frame of mind, viewing things from a certain way to change behavior and actions, right? And that's where I kind of learned about this idea of like pacing. And it's been, you probably heard of it in the past too, but I thought there was particularly useful, because you need to pace. In that case, they're talking about the clients they have and people that are trying to overcome phobias and stuff like that. But you always have to pace them first. You can't go straight to leading them to the solution, because then they won't hear you. Again, it's like that gorilla in the room. They don't see the gorilla. You're trying to point out the gorilla, but it's like they're already focused on the balls being passed, because that's where their pain is. That's where the frustration is. So they don't even see the gorilla. So you can't start by leading them to the solution. You have to start by pacing them with their fears, their insecurities, their challenges, agitating that one pain, and then bringing them to the point where, now that they trust you, you can lead them in a new direction. Another book that's worth referencing is Win Bigly by Scott Adams, and just checking out Scott Adams' blogs. I'll have that linked as well. He does some really good stuff, like when he was following the presidential campaigns between Hillary Clinton and President Donald Trump, and going through that process, he would approach it through a persuasion lens, which is really effective and ties into a lot of these comments that I'm making today on this in the lessons that I've extracted from The True Believer. But one of the things that he's talked about that helped me kind of see pacing and leading more clearly was how he articulated it in the context of Donald Trump, and how he was able to pace his base and then lead them in a new direction. But he had to start by being able to articulate the frustrations and pains of his base, and then he could move into the solution. And so again, Win Bigly is a good book to reference for something like this. Frogs and a Princess is another one that I typically recommend. You can also just check out Scott Adams' free stuff on his blog. Is pretty good, and probably good enough if you're curious about like lenses and frames of reference and this idea of pacing and leading. I think his instruction has been some of the best to help me understand how it works and how to implement it. And Frogs and a Princess, from an NLP kind of more of a personal practitioner standpoint, I think is really useful as well if you're curious about this topic. So in summary, the 7 marketing lessons that I gleaned from The True Believer are: market to the frustrated. Don't market to people who aren't frustrated. Don't market to the content. You can, but it's an uphill battle, a losing battle. I'd say don't market to anybody else other than the frustrated until you totally tapped out the frustrated market, okay? Second thing is aggravate one pain. So there are a million things in this world, and as human beings, we're trying to navigate it. We're locomotive beings, and we're trying to get to our goal. And there are things that will get in the way, that object to us trying to get there, and there will things that will help us toward it, affordances. And so zooming in on one pain will help your customers focus in on that one pain versus trying to articulate like a dozen different pains or 100 different pains. They won't be able to focus on all of them. They can't. The human mind cannot. So you want to find the one greatest pain and agitate that, because that's the only thing that people can see when they're really frustrated by something. It's like if you're dying of dehydration, The only thing you see is water. And if it's not water, then you don't see it, or you process and discard it. It's meaningless. So for your people that are dehydrated, that are starving or dehydrated, need water, what is that dehydration that your customer has? And how is your solution to the water is a way to think about it. So aggravate one pain, best way to do it. Don't try to cover a bunch of pains. Number 3, cultivate extravagant hope. Listen, even though we're targeting the frustrated and agitated pains, you need to be the kind of person, brand, company that's so hopeful that it just permeates everything you do. And that hope should be through, not only just because you're so hopeful about the future. It's like, yeah, all these pains exist, but they don't have to. They don't have to, right? Because you have the keys to the kingdom. That ties into number 4, which is demonstrate irresistible power. Those are your keys. So what makes your product or service stand out in a way that matters to your customers, in a way that they would remark about it to others, that they would share about it with others? Because if it's remarkable, if it's different in a way that people would remark upon, then you're doing something right. But if people aren't even talking about it, then you need to keep working on it. It's like the solution has to be remarkable. People have to be able to remember it and share it and talk about it. It has to be different in a way that matters. And it has to hold the keys to that kingdom. It has to, through your hope is permeating everything. And then they see, oh, wow, not only is he hopeful, he's so hopeful, and this brand is so hopeful, or this company is so hopeful, like the solutions they're giving, or they're so for sure about what they're doing. And it's because of this technique or this strategy or this proprietary process, and because of this and this and this and all these other things to kind of supplement that. That's where the irresistible power comes in. Number 5 is define a common enemy. This is a great way to rally your base and get them all on one side, and to be able to say, yeah, I'm not that other person. I'm not that group of people, or that's not us. We do it this way. And you could do that, again, a good reference for this is Apple versus PC. You can do it in a way that's not aggressive or angry or full of vitriol or hatred. You can do it in a lighthearted, fun way. But you should define a common enemy. If you don't have one, find one. Pick it, seriously. This is going to be my challenge and my homework for you. Do it. It's actually the simplest thing you can do. And it'll make your writing, your marketing just more persuasive, entertaining, and useful. Number 6 is keep them active. Keep your customers, your clients, your subscribers, your readers, your fans, your followers active. And I'm not just saying keep them busy just to keep them busy. That would be like the lesson from True Believer and how to create like fanatics. Just keep them busy with anything. I'm recommending you keep them busy with meaningful activity that helps them achieve their goals. Because if you do, the mere exposure effect will pay off for you. People will start to prefer you, and it builds camaraderie in the people who are taking action, especially if they're in a group working together, or even if they're working autonomously. If they're all kind of following the same path or the same system, there's camaraderie that can be built by keeping them engaged even on their own individual actions within that group. So again, in the digital space that we live in, you could do that very effectively through forums and groups and things like that, and ways to get people to participate and engage with you, and even other customers or clients or students in your programs or courses, or just users of your end product. And number 7 is sell what they believe. Probably the most important thing, and ties into all these other things. There's no such thing as Inception. It's a great movie, but you cannot plant a seed. Like, maybe some people think they can, and I'm sure there are people out there who believe it and want to believe it, like the Force or something like that, that just through strength of mental effort that you can somehow plant a belief in somebody's mind. That doesn't actually work in real life. In real life, people have beliefs. They're coming to the scene with years and years and years of beliefs built up over time that have reinforced themselves over time. You don't want to try to deconstruct that or destroy that. It's a loser's game. Instead, by targeting the frustrated, marketing to the frustrated, finding their one pain that they really, that their most pressing pain, their most pressing problem, that's what you're going to speak to. And you're going to talk in a way that is the same way that they would talk to themselves, that they would think about the problem, they'd think about the pain, they'd think about the solution, or the thing that they want instead, the better life that they want. You need to start there. You need to pace them in their own words through your messaging, through your marketing, and then you can lead them to your solution, which is, of course, demonstrating your irresistible power and cultivating that extravagant hope to do that. So that kind of ties up all 7 of them, I think, in a nice way. So a lot of different ways I could go down and zoom in on this more, but that gives you the basic summary and the 7 marketing lessons learned from the True Believer. All right, so here's how you guys can join the conversation. So sign up for my free newsletter. Go to tomworks.com/newsletter. Sign up. You'll get about weekly updates on this. This is a great way to communicate with me too. Just reply to one of my emails if you have questions. The second thing is subscribe to this channel on YouTube. Go to tomworks.com/YouTube. Give it a thumbs up, share it, spread the word. Seriously, I don't want, doing this in a vacuum isn't very much fun. You guys help to support just by sharing. You don't have to pay for anything. Just spread the word if it's useful. And the last thing is I want you to leave a comment. Which marketing lesson was the most surprising or useful to you? So which marketing lesson that I gleaned from the True Believer was the most useful or most surprising or most remarkable? And share in the comments, okay? I want to hear from you. All right, that's it for today. Take care.